Hey guys, welcome back to the Machiavellian Monkeys podcast, the podcast where we study the human animal and power because it's hella interesting. I am your host, Aaron James, sitting here with my best bro.
What's going on, Lurker Mario?
Hell yeah, we're still continuing our study of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. Today we're tackling chapters 14 through 17, the duties of a prince with regards to militia, the things of which men, especially princes, are praised or blamed, of liberality and miserliness, and then of cruelty and clemency, and whether it's better to be loved or feared. All right, you start us off, man. Where are we at?
Yeah, man. My notes just say first paragraph, exclamation mark, savage. So
yeah, underlined it for sure.
Let's go. A prince, therefore, must not have any other object nor any other thought, nor must he take anything as his profession but war, its institutions, and its discipline, because that is the only profession which befits one who commands. And it is of such importance that not only does it maintain those who were born princes, but many times it enables men of private station to rise to that position. And, on the other hand, it is evident that when princes have given more thought to personal luxuries than to arms, they have lost their state. And the first way to lose it is to neglect this art. And the way to acquire it is to be well versed in this art. End quote.
Yeah, Dev, so the basic thing he says, the prince should study warfare.
Yes.
Because, I mean, warfare is the lifeblood of the state. Anyone who knows anything about libertarianism is true. Goes all the way back to Machiavelli. So you want to keep the state going and flowing, you got to be on the warfare.
Yeah, you have to be able to rule through coercive means, which is typically by the hand of the law or the hand of arms.
And from the practical perspective, if you're running a state, especially back in, early Renaissance Italy, if you're not powerful as a state, you're just liable to be, invaded and taken over. In fact, one of the lines I have underlined here is being disarmed renders you contemptible. No one likes a weak man. I don't think anyone likes a weak man. And there's another line here that says there's no comparison whatever between being armed and a disarmed man. It is not reasonable to suppose that one who is armed will obey willingly one who is unarmed. So are there any unarmed man will remain safe among armed servants? Okay, that was the one I missed, is the servants part.
Right.
Generally, if you're unarmed, a bunch of different, diverse armed men, you could feel pretty safe because there's a lot of firepower, and if anything pops off, it probably won't because there's, mutually assured destruction on a certain level. No one wants that.
And so what I see this goes back to some of the previous chapters where we're talking about like keeping arms and then having mercenaries and using your own arms versus being reliant on someone else's generosity or whatever, and being codependent or reliant on outside forces rather than being able to rule your lands and have control over them, right? And then also in regards to keeping the servants unarmed, you see this, what is it?
In Japan?
You see this in Japan. You see it in Cuba. You see it in America, during the time of slaves. You see this like in several times. I think my notes right here are Japan for Nobunaga and Hideyoshi ordered seizures of swords to disarm the peasantry, to distinguish the class system that they had. Only nobles and samurai would be able to have swords, and then also so that the peasants wouldn't be able to uprise. Yeah, it's like keep them down,
Keep them down, have a distinct advantage, and let everyone know it.
Yeah.
So the duties of prince of militia is all about warfare. So there's two courses of study here as he explains it. One is a course of action, which is generally hunting and knowing the land. And then, of course, there's the study of history and warfare thereof.
Oh, yeah. So when he talks about studying the land, he says, a prince must train himself more in times of leisure than in times of war. So you're going to want to be, like, more prepared during peace times or, like, getting ready so that when war arrives, you're, like, ready to come to terms with it or like rise to the occasion, and his suggestion is hunting. I thought this was so cool, right? It makes more sense back in the day. Like you would go hunting and you'd go hunting towards different biomes. So you'd want to be through the caves, or not the caves, like crossing rivers and hillsides, and then like seeing the multiple different terrains. He brings up Philippine.
Philippemon.
Philippemon. Oh man.
Or how do you pronounce Greek?
Yeah.
Of the Ki.
Yeah, and he talks about how they would go camping and stuff, and what it's like.
Yeah, he's a total like war nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about, being in that mindset and thinking about if y'all want, like, you can see how far you can see on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where there's going to be shelter, or how hard it is to cross the river if you go hunting and try to cross the river. Plus, you're following game, you're chasing something, so you kind of get that in your mindset as well. And another thing it does is accustom you to hardship as well.
Oh yeah, the elements.
So you're not being, soft.
Yeah, and as far as like knowing your surroundings, I mean, any gamer, like whether you play Total War or like even first-person shooters like what is it, Call of Duty or Apex or whatever, like the people who know like the nooks and crannies and like where they can turn or where they can hide or like how good their vision is, the people that understand the dynamics are going to perform better than the people that are just like pointing and clicking.
Yeah, that's why I get rolled on, dude, because like for whatever reason my brain cannot or doesn't do the mapping well. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if I do it necessarily great in real life, but yeah, I'm the guy who's like running around spazzing, trying to shoot stuff and freaking out because like, yeah, it's pretty hilarious.
All right, and then the other main study for princes in this regard was to read the histories, study great men, how they conducted themselves, the reasons for their victories and losses, and then imitate the heroed greats. Mm-hmm. So like try and live to that higher standard, and like how could that apply to your situation? And then I love this because it reminds me of just reading books, and whether it be fiction, because there's some really good fiction nowadays. I don't know about back then, but like reading stories and then learning lessons from other people's experience. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This will bring us to the next chapter of things of which men, especially princes, are praised and blamed. And obviously there's the one paragraph to take it away is how we live is so far removed from how we ought to live that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his own preservation. Of course, there's also a caveat here: a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness and everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. Mm-hmm. So, and this is the part of the book where it talks about sometimes you got to be bad. Yeah. Because you're going to be around a bunch of bad people. Mm-hmm. And if you are a slave to goodness, it limits your optionality significantly.
A great example of this in fiction is Eddard Stark. He's like got justice behind him, and he's doing everything right, and he's got justice and honor, and he's got Robert Baratheon's will, and he's down there messing with all the Machiavellians in King's Castle or whatever the name of I forget the name of the city.
King's Landing?
King's Landing, yeah. He's down there messing with all the Machiavellians down there. And he gets his head cut off for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being inflexible. Mm-hmm. So, man, that was rough.
Yeah. It's so bad. The story for them just gets worse and worse. Like,
for anyone out there, this is why like anarchists make fun of constitutional conservatives or anyone who's like constitutional based, because it's just like it's a piece of paper with words. I mean, the words.
Was this your shield? A piece of paper? Shh.
Exactly. That paper has to be enforced by somebody, so it's not the paper that's doing the job; it's the person enforcing the rules. So, beware the constitutions. Keep them in mind, but it's not politics. Mm-hmm. All right.
And some virtues, if pursued, will lead to destruction. Some vices, if pursued, will lead to safety and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you must not mind incurring the scandal of those vices, without which it would be difficult to save the state. Which means you got to take the slander. You got to, you don't have to take it necessarily, but you got to be like, I guess you got to take it for a little while if it's going to save the state. Otherwise, you lose the game. Mm-hmm. You lose the game, then you're not playing no more, and then it's all moot anyway.
Right. And so I guess that's like an appeal to reputation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is also where he introduces avarice and, or it says misero and avaro, which leads to the next chapter of liberality and miserliness, or maybe niggardliness, depending on your translation, which is basically liberality versus conservatism.
See, instead of liberality in mine, it says generosity.
Oh, generosity.
Generosity and miserliness.
So yeah. I mean, this is all written originally in Italian, so, or probably Latin actually. Maybe I don't know if it was Low Italian or not. It'd be interesting to find out. But
yeah, it says it is good to be considered generous, but it's harmful to have a reputation of being generous. It's something I saw. So it's like you want to be able to like do favors for people and like keep your circle happy, but you don't want to be doing it at the expense of where it's kind of like when you're in businesses, you don't want to spend more than you have, or you don't want to like live exorbitantly if you can't maintain it.
Well, the big thing there is the expectation. So if you're known as generous and someone comes to you
and you're not generous,
and you don't show generosity, they're going to think something. They're going to be like, well, what's up?
Disrespect.
What have I done wrong? Am I disrespected it? Have I made him mad? Or something along those lines. So, and then it also says here, the prince must care little for the reputation of being a miser if he wishes to avoid robbing his subjects. This is the thing he says, like, if you're generous, eventually you're going to run out of money, then you're going to have to raise taxes, and then you're going to pissing people off because, you're taking their stuff.
Yeah.
Taxation is theft, obviously. The only caveat there being is if you can go to war and take other people's wealth, then you can keep being
frontier.
Generous, keep your wealth, keep everyone's wealth, and then extractive capitalism.
And well, this is mercantilism. This is like before we had the fiat currency. We had like hard goods back in the day, like hard resources, like goats, pigs, coal, oil, gold,
precious
silver,
metals,
steel.
Yeah, I wrote in my book here. This doesn't apply to print-on-demand fiat.
Yeah,
unless you
now we have modern monetary theory.
Unless you consider the print-on-demand thing is, I mean, it's pretty much robbing your subjects, but it's like doing it on the down low because most people don't understand, fractional reserve banking, and why tax people if you can just print the money?
Right.
It's like,
and a lot of people back then wouldn't even know how to read, let alone consider like the gold isn't. It's or the silver's mixed with nickel or whatever the fuck it is they did back then.
Yeah, it's probably one of those reputation things that spreads and then reduces the faith in the currency. And then you got people melting down currency, which is against the law to extract all the precious metal. And yeah. In
regards to looting, I guess he uses Cyrus, Caesar, and Alexander. He said, spending the wealth of others does not lessen your reputation, but adds to it. Spending your own is what harms you. So this is good. Like, I guess you could see this in Imperial Rome when they're going out into Gaul and Germany and Spain and then wherever the fuck they want to go, and they're conquering the area and then sending everything back home, and then also allowing the soldiers to loot and keep slaves, and then they can bring that, and then also giving them land out there, which is like. Because when I think about Imperial Rome, I remember there was a certain time where, I think it was Caesar's time, where there was like a bunch of slaves in the mainland taking up all the jobs, and then all the nobles had all the like wine country and stuff, and then they had already started like mass agriculture. So these nobles would have like large plots of farmland, and then they'd use slave labor. So now it was like harder for people in the cities to like make ends meet, right? Because most of these people are living as subsistence individuals, whatever it be, like butcher, craftsman, and so a lot of people would join the military just to get land and resources, which is good for the state.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, the war is lifeblood of the state, man. Because
their whole thing was like keeping the war outside of the mainland. It's like, oh well, we'll just keep the conflict in Germany and in Spain and Asia Minor.
I mean, I'd have to go back and do a whole study again because eventually it broke down because eventually the Goths and the Visigoths and the Vandals came through and
it was big,
wrecked shop. So Yes, it worked for a while. They were the most massive empire till
they made a lot of enemies.
Till the British and then America. So.
Yeah.
And then this will bring us to our final chapter to examine today, which is of cruelty and clemency and whether it is better to be loved or feared.
Oh, yeah. Above all else, a prince must guard himself of being despised or hated. So this is where he introduces this idea. I think he says it 3 times in this chapter. It's like, don't be hated.
Yeah, that's the big thing. He even says it in the previous chapter, of all things that a prince must guard against, the most important are being despicable or hated.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone's afraid of you, that's fine. That's it's powerful. But if they hate you, they have motivation to invade or attack or whatever. So, or work against you, I should say. If they're afraid, then they're like averse.
Mm-hmm.
If they love you, then they want to help you. Of course, he says, people will love easy as long as you benefit them. They're entirely yours. They offer you their blood, their goods, their life, their children. When the necessity is remote, but when it approaches, they revolt. And the princes relied upon solely on their words without making other preparations is ruin. For the friendship which is gained by purchase and not through grandeur and nobility of spirit is bought, but not secured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is on human action. So I guess this is just human psychology based on fear or love, right? And then it's like every prince must desire to be merciful and not cruel. Nevertheless, he must take care not to misuse his mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And not mind incurring the charge of cruelty for the purpose of keeping his subjects united and faithful. Because you don't want to allow disorders to arise from whence spring bloodshed and rape. For these as a rule injure the whole community. So if you tolerate a little bit of evil, it's going to make everyone pissed off, and then you're going to have to commit greater acts of cruelty. Just to fix it.
It says here, what is it? Few examples of cruelty will be more compassionate than those of who, out of excessive mercy, permit disorders to continue.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That can be ruthless. I mean, I feel like that's what... I mean, I don't want to say that we're missing this in the United States, but definitely like...
The George Floyd riots, bro.
Well, not just that, but like...
It woke up a lot of people. It was a big red pill for everyone to swallow.
For sure. And so like these acts of cruelty, would back in the day would have been like public executions or gladiator games or stuff like that, I mean,
execution, imprisonment, probably seizure of property.
Yeah. Some
kind of, disfigurement.
Perp walk. Yeah.
Yeah. All kinds of nastiness that I believe...
Shaming, anything.
Was it the Fourth Amendment? I don't remember which amendment it is.
Oh, cruel and unusual punishment?
Yeah. Of course, it's paper, so it's only as good as the court.
I'm sure we were still hanging people. Like, we hung Saddam Hussein, like...
That was over there. That was over there. We didn't do it.
Yeah,
His own people did that to him, right?
Yeah.
And whatever all the stuff they did to Gaddafi's body, I don't even want to read about it because I heard it's just
You didn't
nasty.
just watch the video?
No.
Yeah, they had him in the streets, bro.
I don't have the stomach for that, dude. I watched
LiveLeaks.com. I don't know if it's still there.
Of a dude getting his head cut off with a pocket knife, and it had made me angrier. So it was like the righteous fury of God, bro. I am the truth that hates unjust deeds that are wrought in this world. All that kind of shit, bro. I was like, no, I can't handle it, man.
Yeah, I think that shit should be, like, I don't know. I think it was Vietnam when they started censoring that stuff. But, like, I think some of that stuff needs to be seen. Like, particularly, I understand more so in, like, Mexican news. They'll show like people with their hands and feet cut off and like hanging from the highways and shit, like talking about cartel violence, and they'll like go into the houses and see like the old ladies dead on the ground and all that shit, and they're showing you, the public, that to be like, look at the problems with the cartels and shit,
Mexico, well, I believe it has a veil of reality, but for all I know, it could be just as bad over there on a certain level of social wealth or whatever than it is here, because you're trying not to upset the sheep, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to keep them in the pen. You want to
Right.
keep them mellow.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep them working.
Right.
And taxing them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kidnapping all the little girls to, you know, get the adrenochrome.
Right.
All that stuff, you know. But
No, but I just think, you know, it's similar to what you were saying, that red pill moment. You know, some of these things, like, people need to see.
I mean, Vietnam was a big deal because
Yeah.
that was the first time they actually had, you know, I believe color
Video.
TV
Yeah.
of warfare.
And you're watching these kids getting burned alive.
Yeah, I bet if you went over to, I don't even know where if you went over to Yemen right now,
Mm-hmm.
I bet the U.S. military just take your camera and be like, nope, you can go over here for your pictures.
Right.
We just got in these new tanks, these new missiles. You can take a picture of those,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll go have lunch.
Right. Boom.
You know,
Man.
it's horribly corrupt.
Different
So.
systems. All right. And it says a prince must proceed tempered in prudence and humanity, so that too much trust may not render him impotent, nor too much distrust render him intolerable.
Now I'm just mad.
Yeah. Oh, how so?
Because our government's failing to follow Machiavelli's rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not tempered in prudence and humanity.
Yeah, I mean, come on, lie better.
Yeah.
If you're going to lie to me, at least be good at it.
Be good.
But you can't do that when you have a freaking corpse for a goddamn president.
Well, you have, like, yeah,
And
There's-
Kamala can't lie.
definitely layers.
She
and
starts
layers.
laughing.
Yeah, no, no.
She's crazy.
I don't know.
You know? No, Donald Trump was like, he could lie to half the population, but the other half just hated him,
Yeah.
whether he was telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Yeah, man, so you want to be a good dude so that you're not freaking everyone out. You don't want to be Stalin where everyone's afraid of you.
Yeah, so it's intolerable. Mm-hmm.
So of course, he had like a supreme, I mean,
He had
I'm not-
layers and layers. Like,
yeah, I'm not super knowledgeable about what was going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't studied it a whole lot, but like he obviously lived till he had his stroke and no one wanted to help him.
right.
You know, I bet the cook was putting extra salt on his shit.
It's like, motherfucker.
But yeah, it's simple. You know, you only want to exercise cruelty where there's proper justification and manifest reason for it, and above all, abstain from taking the property of others. For men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony.
Mm-hmm.
And he also says, you know, yeah, don't interfere with people's property or with their
Or
women.
they're women, yeah.
So
That makes sense. And I'm not sure if at that time women were property. I know they were in the Roman era.
well,
I'm not sure at this time because I think it's 1509. This is a little later.
around 1500, and it depends on like interpretation because they might not have been like legal property, but some people would be like the way they were treated or however.
Right. Yeah. That's his responsibility because they're married or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how they make it sound in fucking The Godfather.
Not legal property, but like more like a cultural property.
I don't know because in The Godfather, great book by the way, Mario Puzo.
Yeah,
What is
one
it?
of the best books I have read as far as entertainment goes.
Yeah, The Godfather. Don Corleone's wife gets married, and then the husband starts beating her, and then when they come to the dad, he's like, for help or whatever, he's like, it's not my responsibility. Like,
Right.
yeah, and I mean, Sonny, the oldest brother, goes and beats the shit out of that guy, but still, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it did, and that was, I think, also to show like a difference in their, not just their dynamic, but their values.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but back to Machiavelli. I said right here, he says, he asks the question, to be loved or feared. He says, be both one and the other. But he says that if one has to go, let it be love. Like if you're going to pick one because the other's lacking, it's safer to be feared. He says, because fear is held by a dread of punishment that will never abandon you. Mm-hmm. When I read that line, I was like, oh my God, bro. Like,
Yeah, it has to be proper fear.
mm-hmm.
So it can't be half-assed. It can't be, cause I don't know, just probably get into more of my spirituality where it's like, if you can abandon certain fears, then it don't there's a certain point where it don't really work no more.
That's Stalin right there. That's Stalin. The
Yeah.
fear that is held by dread of punishment that will never abandon you. I think last time we were here, because this is our second recording of this episode.
He's lying. This is the first. It's an awesome take. It's going fast.
It's going great.
It's great.
We were talking about this is how like Stalin controlled everybody. You know, they had the media was in their pocket, not so dissimilar to what we have going on now, but thankfully to the internet.
Because if you control the media, you can control people's worldview and their beliefs. Because if especially like with the pandemic or whatever, you have people locked in outside. They think what they're seeing on the screen is reality because they're not going outside and
they're stuck. And so they had control of the media, and then they had wiretaps and everything, and so they knew if you were talking against the state or if somebody reported you, you know, they would come to your house, they'd knock on the door, and they'd take you away. They would just take you away, and then off to the gulags you go. And whether that's to do hard labor for years or, you know, just to be shot and killed, they had lists and lists. And that kind of, that fear of that, what's it called? Self-censorship and neighbor policing or whatever. I forget what, it's not neighbor policing.
snitching.
Well, yeah, but, yeah. Yeah, snitches get stitches, motherfucker.
So
And it says, be feared in a manner that you will avoid hatred.
they avoid hatred.
Yeah.
Now, where's that? Is that a good passage on? Oh, yeah. Oh, so we already covered. For fear and the absence of hatred may well go together.
And it says, men love at their own pleasure, and that fear at the pleasure of the prince.
A wise prince must rely on what is in his power and not on what is in the power of others, and must only contrive to avoid incurring hatred.
Yeah. And to me, that's all just like Stoic philosophy, you know, applied to
Statecraft.
yes.
Yeah. And Stoics are probably right about, I don't know, probably 95% of material reality. So, I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah. That's definitely helped me for sure.
Of course, he was reading Cicero and all that probably, so he probably got a good dose of it.
Yeah.
Trying to live life as it is and
I'm
not
sure
as it ought to be.
He mentions Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And this is when he's at his house tripping balls, thinking about or putting on his ornamentation and talking to the spirits of the past.
Oh, yeah, doing his mental mastermind.
That's super cool, man. That's like ritual.
Hey, man, do it. It's if you practice it long enough, it can get really trippy based off what I've read. So, but yeah, it's chapters 14 through 17 of The Prince. Talked about Prince's responsibilities as to warfare,
staying armed,
staying
sharp,
staying hard, about things which princes are blamed, you know, which is generally doing with economics, liberality versus miserliness, and then topped off with cruelty and clemency and whether it's better to be loved or feared.
And to avoid hatred.
Yeah. So we will be back next time. We'll probably just do a few chapters.
Yeah, they look a little meatier.
Yeah, because we're getting into some meatier stuff. We like to keep these things on a more digestible length for y'all out there, and we appreciate you hanging with us. Where can they catch you at?
Oh, yeah, they can follow me on Twitter at LurkerMario, and they can go to www.machiavellianmonkeys.com. We're also streaming on, what is it? Are we on Google Play?
I'm not sure, dude.
Spotify, for sure.
Spotify.
Podbean.
Maybe iTunes. I mean, we're pretty much on the big guys.
And we'll be on the tube.
You know, and then we're on YouTube as well. So, like, you can find us. So, yeah, we're on Google. Just maybe not Google Podcasts.
For sure.
If you want the podcast, you can always go to Podbean, though, iTunes, Spotify. You'll find us there. And we'd love to have you listen to our stuff.
Yeah, man. And if you have anything to say, leave a comment. I'd like to hear what y'all guys are up to. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care.